Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I am Mr. Dean Cobalt, and today I am going to be talking about significant figures when we're adding and subtracting. So, how do we figure out the number of significant figures or the number of digits that we're allowed to keep in our answer when we add or subtract? And so, when you're adding and subtracting, to figure that out, you need to remember what the rule is. It's a different rule from multiplying and dividing, which is the next video I will talk about. Um, so when you're adding and subtracting, the rule is that the result of your answer to the problem will carry the same number of decimal places as the quantity that you are adding and subtracting, with the fewest decimal places. So whatever quantity you're adding and subtracting, you're looking for the one that has the least number of decimal places, and your answer should have that same number. So I have a few examples here that I will go over to make this clear. So here you are. You have these three measures, and you're going to add them together. Now, you can use your calculator. So these type of problems are not they're not testing you on your ability to add numbers or subtract numbers together. You can use a calculator to do that. What they are testing is your ability to look at the answer and figure out how many digits am I allowed to keep in my answer. The calculator can spit out a whole number of a large number of digits on your calculator, but you can't keep them all. So you have to figure out how many of those digits you're going to keep. So here you have three measures of inches that you are going to add together. And when you do add them together, your calculator spits out this answer. Now, in a normal pure math class, you just write down all the numbers. You don't worry about significant figures. But in science class, when you're dealing with measurements, you need to worry about how many sig figs you can keep, because you can only report to the right number of significant figures. So think of the idea that your chain is only as good as its weakest link. So your answer can only be as precise as the least precise measure. Okay, so you add these three numbers together and you get this answer on your calculator. How many of these digits are we allowed to keep? Well, if we follow the rule, it is the least number of decimal places the same number of decimal places as the quantity with the least number of decimal places. So you look at your quantities that you added together or subtracted, but in this case we're adding, and you say, okay, well, this has three decimal places, so that quantity has three decimal places. This quantity has two decimal places, and this quantity has four decimal places. So the least number of decimal places is 2. So that means that your answer can only have two decimal places. So you're only allowed to keep 2. So that means that you can you can keep that one, but these two you can keep, but you got to cut it off there. So you got to drop the 2 and the 5. So you can only report your answer of 5.41 inches. And watch out for rounding. Remember, when you round, the rule is the number that comes after the last number you're keeping. If that is 5 or above, you round up. If it's 4 or below, then you're going to keep it the same. Now, there is a further rule that you might see in a textbook where if it's 5 exactly, then there's a further rule that say, okay, you go to the next digit after the 5, and if it's odd, then you round up. If it's even, then you keep it the same or something like that. But we're going to follow the more traditional, I guess, rounding. So be aware of that. So here is what you would report. 5.41 inches would be what you would be allowed to report. Okay. What about here where you're subtracting? Same idea. So if you're subtracting, so you subtract 5.9 inches, you subtract 0.221 inches from the 5.9, and then you get this number here on your calculator. And then you figure out, okay, well, how many of these digits am I allowed to keep? Again, least number of decimal places. So this one has 1 decimal place. This has 3. So 1 is less than 3. So your answer can only have 1 decimal place. So you can keep the 5 and you can keep the 6. So after the 6, you chop it off. And then because this is a 7, you got to round the 6 up to 7. So you could only keep, so you would report 5.7 inches as your answer. That's what you would report. Okay. Next is a mixed problem. So you're adding and subtracting, but again, because the rule applies to both, it doesn't matter. So again, you put these together, you add these together, you subtract that, and you get this answer on your calculator. And again, how many digits are you allowed to keep? You follow the rule. The least number of decimal places in your quantities determines how many decimal places you have in your answer. So here we have 3 decimal places. Here we have 1. And here again we have 4. So 1 is the least number. So that means we're only allowed to have 1 decimal place. So we can keep the 4 and the 8, and then we stop there. This is a 7. So we round the 8 to 9, and we have 4.9 inches. So that is what I would report. Okay? So I hope that's helpful. Next time we will talk about multiplying and dividing and the rule for that. Don't mix those up. Thank you for joining me, and see you next time.